Hi and welcome back to the next video. This is video number 1 of our real-time to-do application with Nest.js and Angular, and in this video we will be setting up our Nest.js backend, so our API. We will also provide a Docker file for it and a Docker Compose configuration so that we can there spin up like a Postgres database and connect against it. In our Nest.js app we will also do some basic stuff like adding API prefix, connect against the database, create some basic modules like to-do, authentication or user, but without business logic, so just structure so that we have like a robust setup for later. And now we start with the video, and the structure of this will be like first we have a look at the outcome, so we look at how it will look at the end of this video. Then we go through our user story that is written. Then we will have a look at the implementation, so how I did everything. And at the end, we will also check against the user story. And yeah, the timestamps will be in the description, so you can always skip to the parts that you're interested in. And now we can start. So let's first have a look at what we are building. So here you can see our result should be like a Nest.js application that is running. We want to run it with Docker and Docker Compose, and it should connect against the database, and we should be able to query it with Postman. So here you can see we have our Nest.js basic application with like a basic structure for our authentication module, to-do module, user module. We are able to query like the API, which is not at the moment doing some real stuff, but we can like get a basic return. So this is working with Postman. Everything is spin up with Docker, so we have like a Docker file and a Docker Compose file for our services, where we also spin up like a Postgres database that our application connects against. So we can also, with a Postgres admin tool, connect into our database and have a look in it. At the moment there is no data. So let's first look at our story for video number 1. So here we want to set up our Nest.js API, so our backend API. We also want to have like a Docker file to start our API service, to have a Docker Compose file where we have like set up also like a database image from Postgres, and we want to connect like our API with our database. So what we need for this is we need like Nest.js installed, we need npm, Docker, and Node.js. And our story is very basic. So first we want to set up like Nest.js. So here, as a developer, I want to be able to connect with Postman or with my browser against our backend API. So the Nest.js backend should be set up. It should be startable with a Docker file and should connect against our Postgres database. And it should also be startable with Docker Compose, so that the Postgres database is spinned up and that our API connects against it, so that we are later be able to store like data in our database. So we have some acceptance criteria. So set up Nest.js. It should be started with Docker Compose. It should connect to our Postgres database, and we should be able to query like the Nest.js API with Postman. So first we can start by checking our Nest.js CLI. So what we can just simply type is nest -- version or terminal, and then we can see if we have it installed or not. So at the moment I have it in like in version 8.2.6, but the moment or the newest version is like 9.0. So we have here like in the Nest.js documentation, where you can always have a look at. We can just like run the install so that we have like the latest version and that we don't have something outdated. So we want to install the Nest.js CLI globally, so -3, and this will give us like the latest version. So here you can see the Nest CLI is like a command line interface to help us develop Nest applications, so it can scaffold our project, and we have like some schematics to generate like a controller or a resource and so on. So as soon as this here is finished, we can like create with the nest CLI our new project. So we can say nest new and create our project in our folder here. So when we look at here, we just have like our README at the moment. This is empty. We have our git ignore that is just ignoring all my IDE files. And we have our user stories, and then on the same like path or in the same folder here, I want to have like a folder for our backend project. So like the to-do API. So I can do this with the nest CLI. So you can see here, we updated everything. So when I now say nest -- version, we should have like version 9. So you see it here, we have installed 9.0.0. So now we are able to start. So we can just say nest and we make a new application. And we can call this is our to-do application, and this should be our API. So I just name it to-do API. And normally this will also initialize like a Git for the nest.js application, but we already have like a Git on the top level, our GitHub Git repository, so we can skip it. So we can just say -- skip the Git initialization so that we don't have like 2 or different Git, so we have just 1. And this will now create like the to-do API folder here on this level. So what do we want to use? We want to use npm as a package manager. And now we just have to wait. And while we have to wait, yeah, we can go through our user story and what we, you can see it here already. We have now the to-do API folder with everything created. So we have like our app module, so our root module. We have our main TS file, which is like the entry file to run our application. Our nest.js application, our controller, our module, and so on. You can see it here. It's like some already or still missing the imports, because here it's still installing all the packages that are defined here in our package JSON. So all dependencies, and then these errors here should go away. So what we can start is we can already like create like the files that we need later. So on our top level of the project, we want to have like a new file, our docker compose.yaml file for later. So we can just say docker compose.yaml. We want to add this to Git. And also in our to-do API, we want to create like a Docker file where we can specify everything, how to build this image. So we create here also like a Docker file in our to-do API folder. And now we just have to wait till everything is installed here, and then we can go on. So while this here is running, we can already start with doing our Docker file. So we can also add some comments. So first we want to specify node version and our image. So we can say we want to use the node image, and I think the latest one is 16.16.0 or something like this. And we can give it a name to access it later and name it development. Then we can specify the working directory inside our container or in our image. And this is simply the command working directory. And this could be Thomas source app. And now we want to copy like everything from our folder here that we need. to install to our into our container. So we want to copy our package in our package.log.json, so we can make here a wildcard. We can just say we want to copy it into our working directory, and we also want to copy our tsconfig.build.json and the tsconfig.json to see it here, this file or files here for the wildcard into our currently working directory, so here into the app directory. Then we can simply install all the dependencies in our container. So we can run npm clean install, and then we can say npm run build, and at last we should expose like our port, and this will be 3000 for our API. And then we can make like another image named production. So we can say here also we want to use like node 16.16.0, and now we name it production. And we can say we have here like an environment variable, for example, node env is also called production. And our env will be node env that we declared. And we say this is our node env. So then we can set again the working directory, which is Thomas source app, so like the same as above. And here we just want to copy everything from our development stage. And here from our Thomas source app folder to our current one, so it's like the same. And then we can expose also port 3000, and then we can run our app. And we can simply say this, we want this is like a node, and here we want to run our dist, so our main file. So this is basically our Docker file. So later we can, like another story, like make it better looking or faster. So we can here use, for example, the Alpine image from Node, so that we don't have like stuff that we don't need in it. We can make like a different build stage and so on. So there's like a lot of enhancement that we can do, but at the moment this will like do the job. And before we start with Docker Compose, we can now just simply look everything here works correctly, so we can just try to start our nest.js API, and don't let yourself so the files here are red because I didn't add them to Git at the moment, so don't let yourself distract from this. So I can now just cd into my to-do API folder or in my project, and now I can simply run the project. So I can send npm run start dev, and this should like spin up my nest.js application. So you can see it here in our nest on our package.json. We have the start dev command, for example, that is starting our nest with watch, so it watches for file changes. So we could also just start it with start or something, and this should give us like a running nest application here, and we can connect against it. For example, going against our controller, where we have like a simple get hello, and this should return from our app service get hello, and this service just returns like a hello world. So you can see it here. The application got started. It mapped our controller, so our get route, the first one here, this hello world stuff. So now we could go against it with our postman. So we can say we are here, let's see, in our main TS. We are here on port 3000. So we can just go here to http local host 3000 and make like a GET request. And then you see we get a response, hello world. So at the moment we are able to connect against our API. So this is pretty good. So I will just stop it and then we can like develop further. So here this is just like some easy, taking some time, but it's already there, this module. And now we can go to the next step. So you see now we have like the basic nest.js setup. And now we can make it a little bit nicer. So first we have to think about what do we want to have later in our application. So we have probably like a user module where we handle everything like login, like registering a user, and so on. Then we have like an authentication module maybe where we handle like all the JWT stuff. So authenticate a user, check what he's allowed to do, and so on. And then we have like our to-do module where we will handle like all the business stuff, let's say, or the domain stuff for our to-do. So where we can then create like a to-do, create like a new room. So here we can also use the scaffolding from the Nest CLI for us. So we can say nest, and then we can generate a module. And first, or we want to have our authentication module. So we can just name it out. And this should create like a new module in our source folder here. And here you can see we have now an authentication or an out module. At the moment this is not having any imports or anything, but it's also important in our app module, so it's get spinned up with start. And we can also say now we want to have like a to-do module so that we have like a better structure in our code. And so like the out where we are doing some stuff like having like guards and so on. In our to-do module we will have like also the like stuff for our real-time API, so that we have something like with WebSockets and so on. And for our user, we want to have like a basic like CRUD service or stuff. So for this we can use also something from the CLI. So nestjs CLI, I think it's generate resource, and this should not just generate like module for us, but also like a controller, entity, service inside this module. So you can see it here. So normally we need like CRUD endpoints, and we would like divide it into like a module, and we would have a controller in the module, a service, an entity class, DTO, so data transfer objects, and so that we don't need to run like all the commands like create controller, create service, and so on. We can just create like a resource, and this will create like a basic controller, basic service for us. So we can just say nest generate resource, and this should be our user resource, and this will then also generate here our module for us. And here you see we want to have like a REST API. We want to have the basic CRUD endpoints. So we still need to update the files like later, because at the moment this is not having like entity or any properties. So here you see we have now our user module, and we also have like a basic controller where we have like a body with our user DTO. This is at the moment empty, so we need to enhance it later, and it's calling the user service, which is injected, and so on. And in the user service we are just like returning like a string at the moment, so you still need to fill it with like live, but it saves you a little bit of time. So I would like to move the service into a services folder, so maybe we have like later like another service in our user module, and it gives us a little bit of structure, and we can also move our controller into a controllers directory. So our app controller and our app service we are not needing, so we can just delete them. And we have to also remove then our app service from our module and also our app controller, so because we won't use them. And what we can do now is we can now start our API again and try to connect against this user endpoints here that just like return like a basic string from our user service. So let's just spin this up and try to connect here again. And if this works, yeah, then we can maybe set like a global API prefix so that everything is behind the path API, and then connect it also to a database with our stuff here. So you see now we have mapped our user paths, and I don't like this. So first let's check that it's working. So here we just have to go against user, and then we can say, for example, user with ID 1, make a get request, and then we get like in return this action returns one user. When I make 2, then here should be 2. So this is just like the place, yeah, plain stuff that our API works. And we later have to fill it with live and connect it to the database and with business logic and so on. So but this works. So what I don't like is normally this API here should be plural, so I will update the prefix to users, and I also want to have everything from our backend against /API. So what I can do is I can just say here in my main TS file, we can use our nest.js application, and we can just set like a global prefix. So we set a global prefix, and this should just be API. And when I now like spin up my application, then we should have like here /API users 2, and this here should like not give us anything. So you can now see here we are mapping now against API users. So when I now make a call against my old path here, I should get like a 404 or something. You see it here, 404 not found. If I add like the API prefix and make it to plural, then we get like the response that we would like to see. So this now looks good. So the next step that I want to have is like I want to connect to our database, and for this we need to spin one up. So this can be done, or the easiest way here is we use our Docker Compose. So we first specify like a version. I think the latest version is like 3.8 that we want to use, and then we can define our services. So here we have our nest.js to do API, and our service should be called API. And here we want to build it, and the Docker file is simply named Docker file. So this is like the Docker file that we specified here. Like the context, like the path, how to get to it, we say go into our to do API folder, and here we can also target a stage from our Docker file. So we have development stage and we have production stage, and here we want to just target like the development, where we make an install and a build and expose the port. and we still need to start it. So here we can say we want to target the development part. So if you want, we can also add here like a comment. So we can say only build the development stage from our Docker file. And then the next thing that we want to do is we have volumes, and one is our to-do API folder to reflect like everything that we change here, so that when we run it in watch mode, then it should be recompiled to our Thomas source app folder inside our image. And then we can also do this for the node modules folder. Then we need a command like to start everything. So we can here simply say, because we're just building it in a Docker file in the development stage, so we can just say npm run start debug or npm run start watch. So let's just add a comment. So in dev node, this would be npm run start dev, and in debug, this would be npm run start debug. So yeah, we also can like just start it in dev at the moment. Then we can like set some environment variables. Here at the moment we don't have some, but here we will enter like our database URL, for example. But for this we first have to create like our database. So maybe let's make some port mapping. And here we can just map our port 3000 to 3000. I think this should be in quotes. And the environment, let's say database URL, and this is like TBD, so when we have the database service, then we will have it. So here we now want to have our Postgres database, so we can simply name this service Postgres, and we want to use here like a Postgres image. Am I on the right? Ah, no. This has to be here. So this is our Postgres service, and here we want to use a Postgres image. And I think the latest version is 14, and we can use maybe 14.4. And we can set here like some environment variables that are like predefined that we can use. And these are called like Postgres user. So this is like the user name that we want to use to connect against our API, against our database. So this is what we need later, or that we need to add like here in this database URL. Then we have like the Postgres password. This is like here the password that we need to connect against our database. So this is also needed then here in this database URL. And then we need to specify like the database, how it should be called. So we can name it DB or to do or whatever we want. And then we have like also a ports mapping. And like the default port for Postgres is 5432. So this is like inside our image, our container. And then we just, if we want to access it from outside, we have this port here. then like to connect to it via our browser very easily, we can use our Postgres admin service. And here for Postgres, there's like a popular like an admin tool for like a SQL tool for Postgres. This is called p3 admin, so Postgres admin. And this is coming from the DB page, p3 admin 4. And I think the latest version is 6.12 or something, so we can use this. And here we can also say depends on, and here we can specify our Postgres service. So before we are starting the Postgres admin service, this like specify that before this here starts, the Postgres service needs to be started. So we can also use this here for our API service, because if there is no database spinned up, so then the service will not be able to connect to it. So we make sure with this that first like a Postgres database is available. And here we have also like some predefined environment variables to set up, like for the Postgres database. So here we have like a p3 admin, and this is like default email. And this can be whatever we want, admin@admin.com, or however you want to name it. And you can guess it like the default password. You can just name it password. So of course, if you would do this and run this really, then you should choose like a different one. And the p3 admin is, I think, running defaultly at port 80. And if we want to access it in our browser, then we have to call here 5050. So we map here the 5050 to our inside container port 80. So now we need to define here our database URL. And in the database URL, we can like define the user and the password. So everything that we need. So we want to connect against our Postgres service. So this here, Postgres is the name. So this could also be like a local host or HTTP, wherever the service would be. But here it's inside our image, our container, and this is like the Postgres service. So we are connecting against the Postgres. And then we want to connect with our user that we specified here. With a password, and this is our plain password that we defined here. And this should be at Postgres on port 5432 and against our database DB. So then we can use later this environment variable in our nest.js API to start everything or to connect against it. And so that we can use this now in our nest.js application, we need to install, or we need to be able to access like environment variables with nest.js. And for this, there's like also like a package. So we can just Google nest.js environment variables. And there's like a configuration package here. So you can see it here in Node.js application. It's like common to use.env files, and the config module of the nest.js config can load like all this. So we can just npm install this config package. So we save this to our package.json in our to-do API here. So this will add everything and install it. And then when this is done, we can just go to our app.module. And here you see we have at the moment our out module, we have the to-do module and the user module that are imported. And now we also want to have like our config module. And now let's see if the import is working. So we want to import from nest.js config. And then we can also specify that we want to use this for global. And now we should be able to access like everything. So our environment variables, our Docker Compose. So now we need like the type ORM, or we want to use type ORM. And like type ORM, we can just read through documentation or have like a look at it. So like type ORM is an ORM for Node.js. It's also having like a nest.js integration, and we can use it with TypeScript. Here, and with this we have like a abstraction above the database, so that this will handle like everything for us and also give us some features. So you can see it here. We have entities, columns, database specific types, entity managers, repositories that we can use. So we have like find by ID or so predefined stuff that we can use, unidirectional mapping, or we have like one-to-many, many-to-many mappings and so on that we can use. We have transactional, so everything that we can think of we can use. So we can just say nest.js type ORM, and maybe like, okay, this is like the German explanation, but an ORM is like an object. You see it here, relational mapper, to map between our database and our programming language. And it's like, then it's not like database agnostic. So with this, we could also like at one time connect against a Postgres database, and then in the next time we connect against a MySQL database, and then we don't need to rewrite our code. We just need to change like the connection, and the ORM will handle everything for us. So you can see it here. It allows us to, so Nest allows us to work with SQL or NoSQL databases. So we can like type ORM use for this. And this is what we will do. So we need to install like the nest.js type-orm package, the type-orm package itself. And here we are installing MySQL, but for us, we will need like the Postgres package. So I'm removing the MySQL here, and I will add like the PG, which is like the Postgres package. And this will now install everything, and then we can enter here like our database connection. So you can see here, we can then just say like type ORM module for root in our app module, and say, so the type would be like a Postgres, then our host, our port, or we can also use like the database URL here, so that we don't need to specify the type, the host, and so on. We just need to define like the URL that we can get from our .env. We can synchronize it. We can auto-load entities, for example, which will, like you see it here, it will like create all tables for all entities that it will find in our application. So at the moment, we can set this without any reasons, because we don't have like entities at the moment. So you see here we have like in our CRUD user, we have like a user entity, but it's like empty, so it's not annotated with entity and so on for type ORM. So before we don't annotate this correctly, it will not be picked up here. So we can just start by doing this. And here we can use then the type ORM module, again for root. And now we have to wait till this here is finished so that we can import it. This will probably, oh no, it's already finished. And then we can set here like some options. And the first would be, we have like our type Postgres, and for example, when we switch later to MySQL, then we just need to change here like the connection, We don't need to touch anything inside our domain logic. So to access like Node.js or an environment variable, we can call process.env, since we installed before our config module, which is relying on the .env package. And here we named it database URL. This is coming from our Docker Compose. This here is our environment variable that we want to access, so the database URL. And this has like the user and the password. So we can also say auto load entities, set this to true, and we can say synchronize, and this is also true. And why is it yellow here? Maybe close and open the file. What is wrong here? Maybe it still needs some time. So now we have options, and now it's gone. Okay, so it just needed some time, and now we can simply try to start everything, and then also try to connect against our database with the Postgres adminer and see if the application also connects against it. So for this, we can just switch to our root directory and say docker compose up, which should now pull all the images that we need and spin like the container up with our images. So this can take a while. And in this time, we can just like maybe document something here in our README, what we just did. So first we can say how to run the project and additional Docker commands. And so if you want to run everything, you can just say docker compose up. Then we maybe have like some setup steps that we just did. And here we could say like we have something for our nest.js, or chapter for our nest.js backend API, and we are going to have like a chapter for our Angular front end. And this we need to fill time, I want to step by step. But yeah, this will basically, I will maybe do this after the video, so this will just contain like the steps that we did now. And yeah, let's wait till this here is finished. This really can take some time. So now maybe we can just check like the user story if we missed anything. So if this will work, then I think we are all done with this user story. If not, we have to do again some stuff. So that our acceptance criteria where like we want to set up nest.js, we have. So this should be fine, I think. It should be started with Docker Compose. This is something that we will see. Also the connection to the Postgres database. And if we are now able, or still able, when we start Docker Compose, to connect against our nest.js API. So for this, I think if this here now works, this starting everything, then we have all the stuff done. But let's see. So now we are back, and here you can see it started like the Postgres. It started, or it's now starting the API. You can see it's mapping everything, and typeorm was already or also initialized, so it connected to the database. Otherwise, it would like have here a failure. So now we could like again query our API. So since we have like a port 3000 to 3000 mapping, this should still be available, and we get like the correct results. And now we can also try to connect against our database, and for this we can use the Postgres admin tool, which we have running under 5050. So we can go into our browser and go to localhost 5050, and here we should have the Postgres admin tool running, or not. What is the issue here? Let's see. You need to define the P3 default email and P3 default password. I missed like the email, or I misspelled it. So I will need restart it. This should now go a little bit faster than before, since all the images are already there. So it's now spinning up our API or our Postgres service here, then our API, and now I hope the admin tool. Let's see. Okay, it's still needing some time. So this is our API, and where is our Postgres admin tool? Here it's just starting. Okay, so let's give it some time. This PC is not the fastest, I guess. So it's still booting. Let's wait. But we can already in our user story say this is like done. Finished. So nest.js is set up. We can start it with Docker Compose. Our API connects to our Postgres database, and we are able to connect against our API with Postman. And now we can see here, now the admin is also spin up. So here we can now use our email that we defined and the password that we defined to connect here. And now we are like inside our container, so we can now connect against our Postgres database. So we can add here like a new server. So let's just name it maybe to do API or whatever. Then the hostname address is like, I think it is Postgres, not to do. So our service, the port is the same, maintenance database also, the username is what we defined, so I think it was user and password. So this is what we defined here, and also how our service, our nest.js service connect to it. So this should work, I think. So we can now save this connection, and then we should have here like our server to do how I named it. And you can see we have here like databases, our Postgres database, and the DB. So this is what we created. I can load it here, and then here I think at the moment we don't have any data inside, but we have here like a public schema or something, so we can see there's like one database session. So everything is working. So this should be it. And now we can commit like everything. And then continue in the next videos. So let's just say git add everything. And I think we have in our nest.js, we also have like a git ignore. We don't have a git ignore here, not. So let's stop this. We definitely want to have like a git ignore. I think maybe because I skipped the git initialization, because we don't want to commit like all the node module stuff here. So we have like a git ignore. Let's just Google nest.js git ignore and just copy everything that we need. And now we can send again git add sa, and now we should not have all the stuff inside it. And now we can say git commit with a message. This is video 1, and here we say set up docker compose and our nest.js to do API, and then we can just push it.